experiencing the mindfulness. Focusing on one task or another. So I'll say to people, is this possible? So you're working on something on the computer and it requires sustained attention. And then all of a sudden the phone rings and you decide you're going to take that call. And at the same time you're taking the call, you're going to continue typing. And then can you do both?
I say no.
No. And guess what? You can't. You can spend maybe 80% of your time listening to the phone call as you're trying to type, or vice versa, but you're not fully engaged with either task.
I think that lack of mindfulness is why people look back in their lives and they feel empty.
Yes.
Because they're not there.
They're not there.
Steve Melman is a therapist and counselor, and he is so wise. This is a really fun discussion for all of us about how to intentionally set ourselves up for a happy life. And what makes for a happy life? Come listen in. Steve, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
So thank you for having me, Pat. So when I was 13 years old, my parents took me to a child psychologist who ran these tests because I was having difficulties in school, particularly in the 8th grade. And I was struggling. My parents were very concerned about me. So they took me to this child psychologist and who ran all these psychological tests. And then I don't recall how it was revealed to me, but it was revealed to my parents that, gee, if your son graduated from high school, be proud of him because we don't think he can go much further than that. But I now realize that whenever I'm up against something I can't, that's a challenge to me, I say, gee, I wish you hadn't told me that, and I got to prove you wrong. Through tenacity, stubbornness, about the same time, this is what I wanted to do, which is to be a psychotherapist. And to help other adolescents when I became an adult, to help adolescents for the same struggles I had, and then help married couples and so on. So that's my story.
It's a good story. You know, it's a story that I think we all need to hear, and that hard work and perseverance really do pay off.
Yes. And that's always been, some people buckle and some people just fold like a chair. And that's never been me, that I'll always again say, gee, I wish I hadn't told me that, and I got to prove you wrong. And both professionally and personally, that's always been the case. So again, growing up, that's what my parents always said about me was, gee, you're such a stubborn child. You are just so stubborn. Well, what did I know? I was probably 6 years old, 8 years old, until you go through school and you realize that there's synonyms for every single word. And I learned again that through perseverance, tenacity, and I constantly say that when I'm doing counseling with folks, I'll say there's all these words you can use, and you don't have to use the negative word. A good example would be, I don't like that word failure. Talk about a bump in the road or a setback or a detour, but you don't have to look at it as a failure. Or gee, if I got a divorce, that must mean my marriage was failed. No, it just didn't succeed. But it takes two people to make a marriage. And so again, so I'm always big on saying words have power, words have meaning, and make sure that you're using words that help you with your self-esteem rather than using negative words that chips away at your self-esteem.
I don't think any experience is ever failure, assuming you survive it.
Right. I agree. I certainly do agree. And hopefully that's what people get when they receive counseling from me, which is I'm very, very optimistic, never throw in the towel. And I tell people neither should you, and don't put a ceiling on what you're not able to accomplish. You decide where you want to put that ceiling or to remove it altogether.
What is the balance between creating goals and being present?
Um, I think maybe it's both. Certainly, again, you set goals, uh,
Hmm.
and the goals can be way out on the horizon, and I always want to make it achievable. So stop focusing on how long it's going to take to achieve that goal. So very incremental, like stepping stones. So you have those in mind, but at the same time, you want to appreciate what you got. It's not just the destination; it's the journey, and that be mindfulness and appreciating what you have today helps you to enjoy the present.
And it's truly about baby steps, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And so, I when I'm counseling people or doing presentations, I'm very mindful of painting mental pictures for clients. So I'll say, so Pat, imagine you and I are taking 1,000 mile trip together by car. And so you go 1,000 miles. That's a long way. Oh gosh. And so I said, well, we've mapped out our route. We know how we're going to get there. Let's stop focusing on the 1,000 miles. Let's focus on what conversations we could have together, packing our car with our favorite music, and as we're doing those things, chatting and music in the background, maybe singing along. If it's on an interstate, every mile there's a mile marker, and those mile markers stack upon themselves. And again, you can look behind you and you can see where you've been. So it says, I'm from Dallas. And so you could look and you're, 50 miles down the road. You look back and say, back to Dallas, 50 miles. You go, but we're 50 miles down the road. And so all those miles stack upon themselves. And so we stop focusing on the destination and we start focusing on what scenery were we going to see.
You,
Uh,
you
Go
know
ahead.
what I really like about that example that you give is you don't give one or two options. There's a whole range of options. And I think that's always true. Somebody once said to me, never make a decision if you only see two options because
Mm,
you're thinking in black and white.
yes.
The world is not black and white. And I
Yeah.
love the fact that you could talk about music, you have conversations of different sorts. There's so many things you could do on that road trip.
Yes. 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 And we talk about music, and music transforms me to different moods. So if I'm having a bad day, music is oftentimes what I go to. And if we're traveling together in a car, I rarely am traveling in silence. I'm always having, and I say, well, I'm in the mood of hearing so and so, or this type of music. And
You
it's Go ahead.
know, earlier you mentioned about how the things that people say can hurt us, and the words they choose are really important. But I think we all succumb at some point or another to outside judgments.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it's almost impossible, as a human, it's almost impossible not to.
Yes, but you talk about being in the moment, and it's being self-aware of giving somebody too much credit for something that they may say that may be hurtful to you. And so I'm constantly saying, oh, why are you giving this person so much power over you? And just because they have something to say, it's just one person's opinion. How is it that there's so much of an authority figure that they know the absolute truth about you? And so much of the time we get all these positive accolades about ourselves, about us from others. But it's one person has something negative to say about us, and all of a sudden we elevate them to having so much power. Yes, but it wasn't 100%. I got this one person that said all these negative things. That's the person I'm going to put the most value on. Well, why did you do that?
We all do it, but you know what I would ask? I would ask, why do you believe that person?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because
Yes.
that kind of gets to the root of what is it internally that that frames your reference that you allow that to happen.
Yeah, and I love that word you use, allow, because now it becomes a choice. And so when you allow, you've made a choice to accept that negativity that came from that person.
It is a choice. I think that in the moment, it's a hard. I don't know that most of us, particularly when we're younger, have the consciousness to really evaluate what somebody's saying when they're just emotionally beating us up. I think it takes a lot of time and perspective to start to reframe an experience like that.
And you also said when you were young, and along with being young, is we don't have that wisdom, we don't have that maturity. But as we get and to develop hopefully a thicker skin, not to allow people to be affected by what's one person's negativity about us, and to allow them to chip away at our self-esteem or self-worth.
Wisdom is so important. I think it's so needed in this world. We live in a world that so celebrates youth, and smooth skin and all that is great. But I think the wisdom that comes with age and experience is just invaluable.
Yes. Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And so as hopefully as I've gotten older, I've become more and more introspective. That self-awareness, and as I've gotten older, and oftentimes I'm not able to sleep through the night, and so I don't oftentimes get out of bed, but I will just allow my mind to wander. And I start thinking about where am I in the world, and what goals do I want to accomplish personally, and where am I about accepting of myself, and just figuring stuff out about me. And I often will say so Pat, if you and I could go back in time to an earlier part of our life, would we want to do that? Okay, okay. And some people fall into that trap, and they go, "Oh, absolutely, there was this time." And I go, and so they tell me about that, and I go, "So if I could, I would love to go back." And I go, "Well, be careful of that. If you're not able to take your current wisdom with you, you're apt to make the same mistakes you did the first time around."
Yes, yes. If I could take my current wisdom back, now that would be a totally different story.
Yes, and maybe the outcome would be different with that wisdom.
Oh, I think the outcomes would be very different. But on the topic of setting goals, I find goals fascinating because I think you need to have goals of some sort in order to really know where you're going. And
Yes.
yet, sometimes serendipity occurs and you go a different direction. And you can't even connect with serendipity unless you're simply present. So, do you simply show up and be super present and do the best you can and let it take you where you want? Or do you set goals and drive for them no matter what?
Mm. Uh, um, Gosh, there are all these different things. I'm going to relate it and I'll make it fit. So I oftentimes I saw this, and I said, "So Pat, if I gave you the choice between two trees, a mighty oak tree," and you go, "Well, I like that, a mighty oak tree," and I go, "or a weeping willow." And you go, well, I still think I might go with the mighty oak tree. And I go, "Well, wait a minute." The mighty oak tree is not so flexible; it's rigid.
If you live in a hurricane zone, that could be a problem.
That could be a problem. Yes, and the weeping willow, no matter what way the wind blows, the weeping willow is more apt to be adaptable, to be flexible. And so rather than be rigid about your setting the goals you've set, sometimes you need to be flexible. Sometimes, when I was younger, the goals I had, they weren't as important as I got older.
Yeah.
I could tell you that once upon a time, I thought the only way to do what I wanted to do as a psychotherapist was to have a PhD, to be a psychologist. And then along came Texas, and they offered not only Texas, but other states that allowed folks with a master's degree to achieve a licensed professional counselor or a licensed marriage and family therapist, again with a master's degree. And I go, wait a minute, so I don't have to have a PhD, another 2 years, and all that expense and a dissertation as opposed to a thesis. I think I'll revamp my goals and be satisfied, happy with just having a master's degree.
And I think there's a balance between having the information you need to do your job well, having the training, and having some life experience to make it meaningful.
Yes, yes. With a PhD, those additional 2 years is all about doing research
Yeah.
Although I see that the value of being able to read studies and what the what statistics they use, what sampling group and all that, it's important how you read a study. But I've always been one to provide the counseling rather than to do the research. So I don't think I am regretful that I didn't get my PhD.
Now, I know one person who did get her PhD, and she was so disappointed because she said it was all statistics, and she came out of her educational experience, she felt totally unprepared to interface with patients in any way.
Yes, yes. And psychiatrists are like that too. That the majority of psychiatrists, they're medical doctors. They can prescribe medication, they can monitor medication, but very few of them actually provide psychotherapy. And then they may say, if a patient presents a problem, well, do you have a counselor that you could talk to? That if not, I could refer you to somebody.
Really?
Yes, but their patient load is so full of doing assessments for medication.
Hmm.
And 15 minutes after that, after a medication's been prescribed, to see how the person's doing on the medication. It's all about medication, not about the therapy.
Yeah, we live in a world that wants an instant fix, and it often sees pharmaceuticals as an instant fix. But I talk to an awful lot of people, and my life experience is in this vein too, that have found health by getting to the root of the problem, and usually through more other psychological or natural remedies. And I think that while that may not be as quick as taking a pill, I th I think that's a more meaningful approach to health.
I often say, I have little sayings, and I say, medication can't teach anyone anything.
That is a very good saying.
So we can proceed. So I'm very, I can't prescribe medication, but before I actually endorse or refer somebody to somebody who could prescribe medication, I'll say, well, if it's a situational problem, it's not a biochemical, something you inherited from your parents. It's a very, very important to ask questions, very much like a medical doctor. Does heart disease, does diabetes, does cancer run in your family? Well, it's just as important as a psychotherapist, a psychologist, to ask questions like, does depression run in your family, bipolar, schizophrenia, anxiety? And well, why are you asking those questions? Because sometimes we can, it's not a foregone conclusion, but sometimes we do inherit those predispositions.
Well, I think we do because I think that it's monkey see, monkey do.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, our family acts in one way, and when we're young, we think that's the only way you can act in many cases. So we naturally adapt that kind of framework of the world.
Well, and what you're bringing up is it learned or is it something we inherit? So the monkey see, monkey do could be the learn, but sometimes we inherit a DNA.
Hmm.
So so if it's a situational issue, I'll say let's postpone. We can always come back and refer you for medication, but let's see what you and I can do, just providing therapy and working through the situation that is contributing to your depressive symptoms. And then oftentimes I've taught them coping skills that hopefully they won't need to be on medication. And hopefully, I always say as a psychotherapist, my job is to work myself out of a job with you and all my clients. My job is to teach you tools, arrows in a quiver, and so hopefully you use those tools in the future.
You mentioned anxiety, which seems to be a omnipresent buzzword these days. Is this anxiety new? And what exactly is this anxiety?
Well, uh, I would say anxiety is very much like depression in I oftentimes will talk to people about self-talk.
Hmm.
And I'll say, so it's okay to admit that with self-talk, we talk to ourselves all the time. Our self-talk can be either negative or positive. And it's being aware of that negative self-talk. And along with anxiety, not only is it self-talk, but it's also engaging in what I call negative what ifs. Well, what if this? And what if that? And I go, and what if none of those what ifs happen?
I think one of the things you learn as you go through life is that whatever you imagine will most likely not happen.
Right, right.
I mean,
Yeah,
it'll turn out just differently than you think.
yes, yes. I don't know why my mind goes in this direction, but I got in trouble when I was a kid in school, and I was sent to the office, and there was the vice principal, and boy was he effective. It was on a Friday, and he said, "I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with you. I'm going to think about it over the weekend, and I'm going to bring you back into the office." And then back then you could give licks. Or suspension or whatever it was. And son of a gun, if he just didn't make it linger the whole weekend. Monday came around, he never called me into his office. I go, oh, he must have been busy. I'm sure it's going to be Tuesday. Tuesday came around, nothing.
He was pretty clever.
He was pretty clever. But in the meantime, over the whole weekend, it was all those what ifs. And I guarantee none of them were positive.
No, oh no. How do you teach people to watch their thoughts? Because most people are utterly unaware of what they're thinking.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I try to get people to do, is to be mindful of what their thoughts are, and to do that. They could do it hourly, more often than not, and just to say, work it backward. How am I feeling emotionally? And to say, well, how I'm feeling emotionally is not this black cloud that's hanging over me. No, it has everything to do with what you're saying to yourself. You're the driver of your emotions, anxiety or depression or whatever it is. So to be mindful of what you're saying to yourself. Is what I'm saying to myself bolstering my self-esteem or chipping away at it? Is it causing me to have feelings of anxiety, feelings of depression or guilt or whatever the emotion is? And so if you'll come back and you'll say, so what am I telling myself that has everything to do with behind the emotion you're experiencing?
I think when you learn to observe your thoughts, the game changes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And then, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and once you figure that out, then who's controlling your emotions? Well, you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're not giving that control to other people.
You touched on mindfulness, another omnipresent buzzword. How are some of the ways you can bring people to greater mindfulness? I mean, I know that I can be unmindful like anybody else, and there are definitely days where I work at being super present. I work at being mindfulness. It's a choice, and it does take effort.
Yes. So I try to paint mental pictures. So I'll say to somebody, have you ever had this experience? You're driving down the road and you go, uh-oh, I can't remember where I closed the garage door or not.
Or turned off the dishwasher or whatever.
Yeah, or the coffee pot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Or women in curling irons.
Yes.
Yeah. So I go, why don't you know that? Well, I guess because you were thinking about something else. You were trying to that experience of dual thinking, and I go, that's really not possible. So try something different. When you pulled out, you're in the driveway, and you're closing the garage door. Wait for it to close. Don't think about anything other than I'm watching it close. So now when you drive down the road, you go, did I close the garage door? Yes. And I watched it. I wasn't thinking about anything else other than that. And I get myself in the habit as a coffee drinker. I turn off the coffee pot before I reach for the decanter. And I'm talking to myself as I'm doing it, experiencing the mindfulness. So focusing on one task or another. So I'll say to people, is this possible? So you're working on something on the computer and it requires sustained attention. And then all of a sudden the phone rings and you decide you're going to take that call. And at the same time you're taking the call, you're going to continue typing. And I'm like, can you do both?
I say no.
No, and guess what? You can't. You can spend maybe 80% of your time listening to the phone call as you're trying to type, or vice versa. But you're not fully engaged with either task.
I think that lack of mindfulness is why people look back in their lives and they feel empty because
Yes,
they're not there.
they're not there. Well, and speaking of being not there, I love to play around with people, and like the husband or the wife that comes home, and that they're not fully engaged with family members. They're still thinking about work, either the work they left behind or the work they're going back to tomorrow. And I go, "You're cheating on your spouse. You're cheating on your family." What do you mean? I'm monogamous. I go, "No, you just changed zip codes." But physically you may be home, but mentally you've disengaged. And they use that expression about for work, you clock in and you clock out, and that expression of, no, when I leave work I'm clocking out.
I think part of the appeal of extreme things is that they really make you focus, and therefore they make you feel alive. But you don't have to do extreme things to feel that way.
Right, right. And so I play around with people, and I'll say, so as you're heading home, I want you to think with work in your rearview mirror and you're headed home, I want you to think about, so how do I want to spend time with the family? How do I want to spend time with my spouse? What conversations would I like to have? What would make it so engaged with my family that, when I'm back at work the next day, I didn't even think about last night work at all, not even 1 nanosecond.
And you'll show up at work fresh and more present.
Yes.
And anything you imagined wouldn't happen anyway. And if you try to push what you imagined, everything's going to fall apart. So your best bet is simply to show up, be present, and react to whatever is there in the moment.
Yeah.
And you
So
need to go home and have fun.
absolutely. So I try to help people with that, and I'll say, so let's do something. I want you to on paper, I want you to write down, I'm still old school, so it's all about paper and pen. I want you to write down a set of tasks that you need to perform at work. And as you're crossing them off, you're hopefully not adding to them, but you're continuing to cross them off. And at the very end of the day, the last hour, I want you to look over your list one more time. Am I going to be able to accomplish all the tasks on the list? And then if not, I still want to encourage you to leave at the time that you want to leave. And I always just used to make an exception rather than the rule that I'm not always going to stay late, only in an emergency. And within that last hour, making a priorities. What must I accomplish? That I'm still leaving at the normal time I am. And whatever I don't accomplish, I'm going to move over to tomorrow's task, start a new task list. And that helps me to find that closure, to wrap up the day, and to have that expression that whatever's there will still be there tomorrow. And I'm going to appreciate and enjoy being home.
I think, they talk about people and the regrets they have when they die. I think that the greatest regret comes from not being present.
Yes, nobody ever on their deathbed says, "Gee, I wish I had worked harder and longer." No, by the time that they're there, they say, "Gee, I wish I had really appreciated the small things and the kids that grew up, and I missed out on things."
There's a really I don't know if you ever read When Breath Becomes Air. It's by Michael Kolinsky, I think his last name is. He was a very successful superstar physician at Stanford. And it's been years since I read the book, but essentially he was diagnosed with something awful. I think some sort of incurable lung cancer or something like that. And he had such an interesting reaction. His reaction was one of relief almost, not totally, don't get me wrong, but part of his reaction was relief because he didn't have to play this competitive game anymore. And David Servan Schreiber, who is also a high-performing physician who had a brain tumor and wrote an amazing book called Anti-Cancer: A New Way of Life. He had a very similar partial reaction to his situation. And I find that stunning that these two highly competent, hardworking people at the top of their pyramids found relief in not having to play the game anymore.
Right, and it required them to change their focus. Life or an illness required them. And it almost became an excuse or an acceptable excuse to now,
Workaholism is an acceptable
yeah,
excuse.
but and to take care of their health, to they help require them to reframe things, uh, reprioritize things, and maybe to appreciate life and breathing and the really important things. And it's not nobody on their deathbed says, "Gee, I wish I had worked harder, longer." No, I wish I had found that balance, and then I'm all about that of helping people find that balance by doing the best they can in every endeavor. So before I forget, I could do this. I do this with I'll say let's establish a goal wheel. And with the goal wheel, you take eight. There, you divide up a circle into 8 parts, uh, and uh, and they're call them pie slices.
Mhm.
And so one is interpersonal or marriage or relationship. That's one. Family is another. Friends is another. Work, career is another. Hobbies and interests, health and fitness, spirituality, whatever that means to you, and self improvement. And for each one of those, establish short and long term goals that we were talking about.
And a lot of those overlap, actually.
Yes, yes, they can. Yes. But as much as where they don't overlap, is what goals would I want to accomplish? Taking care of yourself, health wise, eating and sleeping, and exercise. Um, uh, Even the person's been married, 30 years or more, they can still set marital goals.
Oh, sure.
Self, yeah, self improvement. What do I want to do to better myself? Again, spirituality, whatever that means. Um, uh, Interest in hobbies. Interest in hobbies. I really have this hobby, and I don't know why I let it go, but it's really important. And how to bring it back and establishing new ones. I still have a guitar that still collects dust that I would love to learn how to play. And so it's a goal. I don't know that I'll get to it, but I would love to. I love. We were talking about music. I love watching people play the guitar and how they make the musical instrument actually make music out of it.
It's amazing. I think everybody in some part of their lives is creative. And whatever it is and however you express it, I think it's incredibly important that you find that.
Yes, yes. And so what we're talking about is so I play around with people and I'll say, so Pat, once upon a time I worked with this woman and everything about her was true. I can't remember though whether she's widowed or divorced. I knew that she had kids, but they were adults. But she never talked about her visiting her kids or them visiting her. She always the first person at work, always the last person to leave. She hardly ever ate. And once upon a time, you could actually smoke in offices, and she did. And I embellished the story to say she had two corners of her mouth. One was a cigarette hanging out, and the other corner of her mouth was to sip coffee.
Oh,
Yes. And so I would say, so what happens if work isn't going very well for this individual? It occupies 100% of her world. God forbid if she ever had to retire. And she lived literally across the street from work. So again, she's the first person to work, even the last person to leave work. And when she couldn't sleep, she'd actually come to work.
well, she's narrowed her world so much that that's all
Yeah.
there is.
That's right. And for other individuals, you might know who they are. They're married and they work, and that's all they have. And so now that represents 50%. So, what would happen if you adopt what I'm trying to encourage people to do, which is have the goal wheel? And now look how balanced your life is. With if one thing isn't going very well for you, look at how many outlets you have with all the other endeavors.
No, I think you can be happy and productive and everything all in once. I made a change recently that has stunned me a bit. I used to record my podcast first early in the morning, get it done, get moving. I had the whole day to do things. Well, it's summer and I really need to get more exercise. So I've moved it, as you know, to noon to 1 o'clock, somewhere in that range. So I wake up in the morning and I'm really happy. I have the whole morning to myself. I go and do my 4 or 5 mile loop before I do anything. Or if I don't do that, I stretch. I'm done with everything I need to do by 8 o'clock in the morning, sometimes a little bit later. So I still have the entire morning, the rest of the day, and I've taken care of myself first. It is, I have to laugh at myself for taking this long to make some changes. And I'm not going back to recording first thing in the morning in the winter either. This is really good. I like this.
Yeah, and I often will say that it's all about finding what works for you. And
Yes,
so,
at a point in time.
yes, and to be like that, we've been willing to be adaptable to say that this isn't working. I need to change, and what change is going to be the most optimal for me. And for some individuals, it's like asking them questions like, are you a morning person or an afternoon person or an evening person? How do you learn? More auditorily, visually, experientially? All these questions helps to find out who you are, what makes you tick. And very much like me, I hated it when I was told as a child that I was learning disabled, had a reading disability, and I go, and how much we've come forward today that we talk about learning differences. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a cookie cutter approach that everybody has to learn the same way.
Oh, it shouldn't be. As a matter of fact, personally, I think education's ready for a real revolution, and it could be so interesting and so much fun because there are so many things out there now. You get on YouTube and you can go down the YouTube hole endlessly, but look at what you can learn.
Yeah, and how we learn and to
Yeah.
make it more optimally, rather than labeling somebody that's disabled a disorder because they don't learn the way that schools are requiring them to embrace all the different theories that allows kids to flourish, to be the best they can be.
You know, we touched upon the topic of change. And change is so hard for most people. They want to stay in their comfort zone no matter what. I mean, they do anything to avoid change. What is it with that? And how do you kick them out of their comfort zone? Kindly, kindly.
Yeah, and that can be. I hate to use to say that paint it in a brush that says, older people, the older we are, the more harder it is for us to change. I wouldn't want to say that. I think that sometimes, just as people, we become complacent. We like where we are. We don't want to change, and we were talking about anxiety and the thought about changing creates that anxiety. If I make this change, what's it going to look like? And so most of the time, whatever changes we made, usually it works out. I don't know how or why, but normally, once I embrace this change or it happened anyway, most of the time it works out. Uh, I've had work situations that I go, I'm complacent where I am, but I got forced to leave, and then it was actually better.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think there can be a real positive side to change. It isn't easy to get there necessarily. It isn't pretty, I should say. It can be kind of ugly. But once you get there, wow, what a journey you've been on and how much you've learned.
yeah, the expression about it's not pretty. It's like not wanting to know what's involved in sausage making.
A lot of life is sausage making, isn't it?
Yes, but the end result, if you that sausage is really good. I really didn't want to make that change, but now that I did, it actually is better. Very much like you in determining when's the best time for you to record your podcast.
Yeah, the incredible positive aspects of that really took me by surprise. And it was a combination of things that I need more exercise. I need to get fitter. I don't like where I am. I've always played sports and I'm very out of shape now. I want to cross country ski this winter. It gets hot. So, the middle of the day is out. There were just all these factors that came together. And finally, I woke up 4:30 or 5 and I was like, gotta do it. And it's great. I mean, I'm out really early. Nobody's out yet. Sometimes, I just see the beginning of the sun. I live off this gorgeous road where there are all these horses and farms and beautiful, beautiful scenery. It's a privilege to be able to walk there every day.
I like it. I like it. And I'm a tennis player, and I'm in Texas, so it gets hot during the summertime. So there's this tennis court, and I try to keep it a secret. But there's this tennis court that's shadowed by a building, and so as long as you get there early, in the summertime, like it's like 6 in the morning. But for 2 hours, you're playing in shade, and it makes all the difference in the world of those asphalt courts that can, in full sunshine, it raises the temperature 10, 15, 20 degrees even.
Yeah.
So getting there early, and so I curse when I get up early when the alarm goes off, I go, oh man. But once you get out there and start hitting tennis balls, you go, this is great.
Yes. Yeah, there's so much wisdom in this. If you could leave people with just two or three really great pieces of advice in terms of living a wonderful life, what would you say to them?
Gosh, I got to limit it to two or three.
I know it's hard.
Yeah.
I can give you four or five.
Well, the very first thing I would say is it's easy and it's hard, but be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
I heard this many years ago, which is your best friend came to you and they were having all these challenges in life. They were going through a divorce and they lost their job and they didn't have a place to live. And they are your best friend. You say, come on, live with me, stay with me. As long as I have a place, so do you. And what would you say to that person? You would encourage them and tell them that they're going to get back on life again. And so as much as you're doing that, encouraging your best friend, why not do the same thing for yourself, to yourself? So make it a choice of what kinds of things do you say to yourself? How do you treat yourself? Treat yourself as though you're your own best friend. So along with that, be aware. We're talking about it being aware, being present. Be aware of what is your self-talk. Is it positive? Is it negative? Be careful about engaging in those negative what ifs. And what makes life worth living is setting and accomplishing goals. So, but be careful. You can have these lofty goals, but be present to keep them incremental. Those short-term goals that are accomplished. Oh, I could do that. Well, go ahead and do that. Well, then, wow, that was easy. How about what's the next one? Okay, so I can do that one. And all those short-term goals, they stack up on themselves very much like I was saying to you about those mile markers.
Yeah.
Okay. So relish in accomplishment of goals and then say, okay, the world is to be explored very much like what's my next goal? What's my next destination? And that's what makes life worth living is setting and accomplishing goals, things that mean something to us.